Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon. Today we're going to talk about how to play the Masters of the Universe Clash of Eternia board game. So this is the version by CMON Games that is available in the US and other rest of world countries. I believe not available in the EU. So just wanted to make sure that this is not a Fields of Eternia tutorial. So Clash for Eternia is a skirmish game, so it's a miniatures based skirmish game that's always going to take place on this battlefield map here. There are different scenarios, however, highlighted in the scenario book and additional leaflets that come in the expansion, some of the expansions, that set up the terrain in different ways and give you different objectives. So the goals of these scenarios and how you are victorious and how you start and where you set up are all going to change based on the scenarios. So here is the scenario book that comes in the main box, and you can see it has a decent number of actually, let's see, here's all a list of each one, and so there's like 20 in here. I have just simply set up for the very first one listed, and that's Rescue. So you can see here that I've basically placed out minions and the dungeons, and then my starting characters here and the controller starting characters are back there. So all the bad guys are in gray, all of the good guys are in this peach colored, and then NPCs and other stuff are in this light gray. So again, I'm not going to cover setup necessarily because it's always different, but you do want to make sure that each of your player characters, so these are the individual heroes that you're controlling, have one of these player boards here, and you're set up to the large vertical card setup, and these are going to be empty for the most part, but Manly Faces here is one of the exceptions. He actually gets to start with all of his powers out, and they represent his three faces, and you're going to set one to its dominant side. Again, there might be some other characters I just haven't come across yet that set up like Manny Faces. Also, you're going to want to find their little picture token. This is the health track. So all of the characters' health is kept on this, kept up with on this one track here. This is also going to be where the turn order for each round is displayed, and our escalation track. So if you want to take your little sword of power here and point it at the 0, that's where we start. The controller player, that's the player who plays on one side and controls 3 players at once. It kind of works as a team. So this game can be played in any number of player counts. It can be played solo. There is an AI setup. We're going to talk about that in a different video. But you can play with up to 4 characters here on this side. The controller always controls 3 characters, and you can see that their cards are set on their horizontal side. So if I were to flip this over, too bad here, you would see his vertical one. So I could completely switch sides if I wanted to, and play, with, say, example, the sorceress. If you flip her over, she has the controller side. The controller has this larger board here with then 4 spots for its skill cards that are shared across its entire team, and it does get to start with its skill cards out. So player characters do not get any skills for the most part. Manny Faces is one of the exceptions. Controller does get all 4 of them. You want to make sure they're on the dark side here, the dark border versus the gold border. This is the empowered side. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. You obviously want to have a handful of dice handy. They're all the same. They are unique D6s that have just 3 symbols on them. And then the main premise of the game, which is the power system that they're coining, is these power cubes. So these little cubes are going to be, you're going to be collecting those on your various boards, and you're going to use those to activate your more special abilities. So first thing you're going to do each round is have the order phase, and that's to establish turn order. So the controller is going to take their 4 cards. It's always going to be 1 strategy card along with 1 card for each of their 3 characters. And they're going to decide in secret what order they want things to go on. During their strategy turn, they are going to get to activate their minions as well as their skills down here. So maybe they want to go early, maybe they want to go last. Who knows? But they would make their decisions, and then they would lay out their cards on the controller slots here face down, because the turn order is secret. Then the player characters are going to discuss among themselves what order they want to play down. Now, they are welcome to discuss strategy, but their discussion has to be open. So anything they discuss, the controller has to, or gets to hear. I guess technically you could go into some other room, I don't know. But if you're playing with 4 player characters, each one of them would just have their own card. You would fill up the 4 slots. In this case, I have 3 characters, so I have 1 for each of them, plus this card here that is a player character that says any player character. So basically, each of these guys gets to activate once, and then one of them gets to activate a second time. If you're playing with just 2 characters, they each have 2 cards, so there's an extra card for each of them in the box, and you would just divide them up. And if you're playing solo, you don't need to put out, or if you're playing with a single character, you don't need to put out any cards because they're going to activate every single round. So in this case, we may say, okay, this we've discussed, we've strategized, and this is the order that we are going to play people in. So order phase is complete, very straightforward, but again, it's done in secret. You play the cards face down, so you don't quite know what's coming next. Then the controller always gets to start the round, and they're going to flip over this first card, and so they're going to say, okay, I have decided to activate Whiplash. Now, when you flip over the card, this is when you would first gain your first amount of power, but that controller spot actually doesn't get any power when they activate. So Whiplash wouldn't get any. But let's just move along here for purposes of examples. Once Whiplash would have gone, the player gets to go. They're going to flip over their card, and they would say, okay, there's one little lightning bolt above the sorceress, so the sorceress would gain 1 power. She has to put it in this slot for now because she doesn't have any other skills unlocked. As she would unlock skills throughout the game, she would then need to decide where does she want to allot this power to, because you can only use power to pay for skills that is dedicated to it. So there's 3 slots here for this, 3 slots here for this skill, there's 5 slots for her skills on her player card to begin with, and then 3 more slots that would eventually be for this one. So at the beginning of the game, you're just putting it here at the bottom. Then, once you have gained your power, you get to take 2 actions. And those can be any 2 actions. And you can repeat the same action twice if you want to. And these actions are very straightforward. This is what makes the game pretty simple to pick up and play. The first one is move. That's standard in any kind of miniatures game where there's a map and a grid. Every character, no matter who they are, can move up to 3 spaces on their movement. So 1, 2, 3. It's got to be an adjacent hex, and you can pass through allies, you cannot pass through enemies, and you cannot end on the same hex as another object or miniature or something like that. There are rules about, say, climbing up onto rocks. Basically, it's like 2 points of movement to get up there, 2 points of movement to get down, things like that. These are all explained on these terrain cards that are just reference cards to let you know what happens when you're interacting with those, but that's pretty standard. There are also some characters that have movement boosts that allow you to move additional amounts by spending power. So for example, Stratos, on his card, he can move additional spaces depending if he pays 1 power, he can move an additional space. He's got a jetpack, so he could actually pay up to 3 power to move 6 total spaces in 1 movement action. The next action you could do is interact. So if you're adjacent to an object that you could interact with, say for example you want to flip over this scenario token to see which one it is, you would take an interact action. Or maybe you're next to a boulder. You want to interact with that boulder. The boulder's terrain card here tells you you get to toss the boulder for a ranged attack of 4. There's no other objects here to interact with, but depending on the scenario, again, there might be, the objects may vary. The other main basic thing to do is to attack. This is a skirmish game, so you're trying to take out your opponent most of the time, KOing, and one of your opponent's characters gains you a victory point in some way. So there are two types of attacks, and I'm going to use these two cards here to show them off. So the sorceress here has a ranged attack. She has this target symbol after her staff of magic, 3 range. So that means she gets to roll 3 dice, and she's looking for this target symbol on those dice to equal successes. Whereas Snout Spout here has his fireman's axe. He rolls 3 dice, but he's got the sword symbol, so that's a melee attack. Melee, you need to be adjacent to a character. If you are range is 4 spaces away, no matter what the character is, no matter whose range it is. There's a few instances in the game where your range may change. For example, Snout Spout has one that says you can range up to 6, but that's one of his special cards. Easily explained. So otherwise, just like every movement is 3, every range is 4. So from here, the sorceress 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces away could attack this hover robot with 3 attack dice. All right. In that instance, she's going to roll her dice, and she's going to look at the results. When you are range attacking, you are looking for the target symbol, or you're looking for a castle. Castles are wild. They count as either or as a success, but they also gain you a power. So if she had rolled this result, she would have hit the hover robot for 2 and gained a power. Again, when she gains the power, it can go to any skill as long as that skill is available. She can't start seeding these slots before she actually has a skill there. If you are making a melee attack, you're looking for the opposite. You're looking for swords or for castles. Again, if you roll a castle, Snout Spout in this instance would gain a power. There are some cards, some characters in the game that use those castle symbols a little differently. For example, the hover robot, when it rolls a castle, it does not gain power, it rolls another die. But for the most part, most characters, even controller characters, when they roll the castle, they gain a power. And melee attacks, they're looking for hits. Ranged attacks, they're looking for target symbols. That simple. Once you've determined your number of successes, you're going to then look to see if the character has shield. Whereas like Too Bad here has a shield, so does the hover robot. So if I hit the hover robot for 2, one of those would automatically be reduced by its shield, but it only has a health of 1, so I would still defeat it. But very simple attack system, very straightforward, very easy to learn. The last thing which falls under all of these umbrellas is to utilize a skill. So skills are going to be what is on your sheet here and what's on your skill cards that you spend power for. So, for example, here we have, it says action, heal. We have to spend 2 power to take this action. So this would be one of our 2 actions, the sorceress or one ally within 4 spaces heals 2. Again, she's having to spend power off of her thing. And to do the heal action, she would actually have had to have had the power on this side next to this card in order to spend it and do it. If she had her power down here, she would not be able to do the heal action. She could do attack boost, or she could do her bonus action, which we'll talk about here in a second. So let's talk about the skill cards here, because there's different things that we want to highlight here. So first of all, there's, like we have stated here, the basic action, where it says the word action. This is the action. It takes up one of your 2 actions, and the lightning bolt symbols before it is how many power you need to spend. Surge means that you can add on to that action. It's a boost. So if you spend 2 and then spend a third, you can heal an additional 1. Or if you spend your third one, remember, the max this skill can hold power-wise from turn to turn is 3. So you could only pick one of these. You could instead make this a bonus action, which means this heal action doesn't take one of your 2. Let's look at one of these other ones here. So here is an action that's an attack. So to make this one, instead of her basic staff of magic, she would have to spend a power. and then she can boost it for another point, rolling +2 dice. Now she could also boost Staff of Magic, but she's got to have the power here next to that skill, or she's got an attack boost here, which means she could flip a skill over. Anytime it says attack boost, you can boost an attack. So it's not an action to do an attack boost. It's something you do to improve your attacks. Or then you have your reaction skill here. So reaction skill would be, it tells you on the card when that applies. So in this case, it's after rolling attack dice, reroll any dice. So you could not use this to reroll defense dice. Sometimes reactions say when attacked, so it would be a defensive reaction. And then last but not least, we have here, it says bonus action. So bonus actions allow you to take those without spending one of your 2 actions. So I could take 2 actions. I could move, I could attack with my Staff of Magic, and then if I had 3 power assigned to this skill, I could do this bonus action, which is all allies on the battlefield gain 1 power. It would cost me 3 power, but I could give them power. I don't know whether that would be worth it, but that is, again, a bonus action. Or the Sorceress here has a bonus action. You could spend 1 from the bottom to transform into Zor. So she's got this fun mechanic where she can transform back and forth into the eagle form, and you would just do that. Again, it's a bonus action. It's an action when you're Zor. Zor mainly is used to fly around the map, and then you pop back out, because Zor can't actually attack in any way, shape, or form. So that is your activation phase in a nutshell. When you are the controller, when it's a character's turn, so say up next would be Too Bad. Too Bad would gain his power underneath his card here, and then he can again do the same things. He can move, he can attack, he can interact, he can use one of his skills. His skills are just listed on the card here. And to use these skills, he would have to use this power here that's directly underneath him. When, however, his strategy card comes up, there it is, this is the kind of big turn for the controller, where they get to do a lot of different things and strategize and turn the tide and things like that. So when it's the strategy card flipped over for the controller, the first thing they're going to do is activate their minions. So every minion that's on the board for them, they would look at this card. Every minion gets exactly 1 move action followed by an attack action. So if they attack first, they can't move. And if they move and are not within range, they cannot move again. So that's how they go. They get a movement of 3 again. Their line of sight or range is 4, just like everybody else, but they can only move and then attack, and that's it. Only those 2 options. Once the controller has activated all minions that they want to activate, then they get the choice to, and they also would gain power. So before any of that happens, apologies, is they would gain 2 power, and this power goes down here along their controller board. Again, focusing on one of these 4 cards here, one of these 4 skills, similar to how I can choose to allot to my skills as a character. So after I've gained power, after I've activated my minions, then I can activate any skills I want to, minus the Empower skill. I'm going to talk about the Empower skill here in a second, so I'm just going to flip it like that so you guys don't get confused. Reserves allows you to spawn minions, so you could spend 3 power to spawn 2 minions, and then you could spend 2 more to activate those minions. Battle Plan allows you to, for one, draw a strategy card, which are fun events that help you turn the tide of battle, or for another one, you can play a strategy card and do what it says. And then Command, you can spend 3 power to give one of your characters an extra move. You can do this as many times as you have resources for it. And so, like Command, you can only do once because the max you can assign to it is 5. But Battle Plane here, you can maybe draw 2 strategy cards and then play 2 strategy cards, only spending 4. Your Empower skill is one that you always have. And it basically gives you the ability to react by rerolling dice or giving a defensive boost. This one's kind of always available. It's like a passive ability. These other 3 you can only activate when it's your strategy turn. So each one of your characters is going to get a turn, and then you get this big strategy turn to do all this other stuff. Okay. Easily the most looked over or forgotten rule in the game, some confusing for some, is what they call the balance of power. And that is when player characters spend power for any reason, whether it's they're forced to discard it or they spend it to activate a skill, it goes to the controller. So when the sorceress activates, she's going to gain power based on her position. Let's just say she was at the 2 position, so she gained 2 power. And then she wants to do her fire magic skill on her turn. She would take this cube. She doesn't actually put it back in the source. It goes to the controller, and the controller can put it anywhere on the bottom. All right. It cannot go up here to its characters. It has to go on the bottom. When the characters activate, when the controller characters activate, they're going to get the power assigned to them above, and if they roll dice and they roll castles, they're going to gain power. So that's how these guys gain power. These guys down here gains power from wherever the strategy card activates, and it gets it from the opposing player spending their power. Player characters get their power from where they activate and rolling castles on their dice. So I believe that spoken that way is the easiest way to take in and absorb that information. The rule book can talk around itself a little bit, in my opinion, when it comes to discussing the balance of power and how power is assigned to each various thing. But that is it as far as the balance of power is concerned. It's really not as complicated as it seems. When you spend power, it goes over here and it has to go in the bottom. When these guys activate or when they roll dice, they gain power. When these guys activate and when they roll dice, they gain power. That's it. That's all there is to it. So, as you're playing, there are victory point trackers that I didn't get out. That would be coming up the board on the KO tracker. These would be going down. If you get KO'd, you go back to a spawn spot that may give your opponent a victory point, and you're basically just going to keep going through rounds until a victory or loss condition is met in either way. Each different scenario also has different escalation triggers. So in this scenario, every time you flip over one of these tokens, the scenario would escalate, or anytime someone is KO'd, it would escalate. When the game escalates, you move this sword further up this ladder here. So it starts at 0, then it would point at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. When it hits the colored squares, both sides get to gain a skill in a way. So for the player character here, when it hits the green side, Sorceress and Snoutspout here would get to get out their green skill card, and it's two-sided, and they would have to decide which one of these do I want to stick with for the rest of the game. Snoutspout maybe takes Steam Spray, and Sorceress takes Heal. Sorceress actually, though, has the ability to flip her cards. The controller, instead of gaining a skill card, because they started with all 4, they get to flip one of these over. So maybe they want to make their command action better. They'll flip it over, and that's their kind of empower or escalation action. They also get to take one power cube from the supply and empower up one of their characters. Each of their characters has this gold box at the bottom, which has an empowered skill, and once it is unlocked by placing a power cube on it, they gain that kind of passive ability. So over the course of the game, the controller will be able to empower each of their characters, but they'll only be able to flip over 3 out of their 4 skills. Then as you reach the yellow one, the player characters would grab their yellow skills and decide. Controller character would flip over 1 more, empower 1 more, and then as you reach the red, player characters get to put their red final skill down, you flip over your 3rd skill, and you empower your final person. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That is how you play standard version of Clash for Eternia. So this would be the multiplayer game, where at least one person is controlling player characters and at least one person is the controller. Every scenario is different in their victory and win conditions, so I can't tell you now how you would go about winning. In this scenario in particular, you're looking for the token that, and it, of course, was the furthest one away, the special token, which would be then replaced by an NPC character. In this case, it's Prince Adam. And the controller characters would have to get him back to their spawn points here to win, or actually once they've flipped over all of them, and they would win too. The controller characters are looking to either KO Adam once he's revealed, or KO, I think it's 3 total hero characters or something like that. I don't quite remember, but again, every scenario is different, which adds some variety to the game and some replayability. This is different than the solo rules. So I'm going to cover the solo rules, which are pretty ambiguous and definitely can use some polishing. Once I get a better handle on those, I will come back with a how to play solo video. But as long as you know the basics of how to play Clash for Eternia, you are understanding how to play yourself. The only thing that we're leaving out here in this video is how to control the AI. And again, there's a lot of ambiguity in the rules right now, so I'm just trying to clarify some things. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, including more He-Man coverage, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. And once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.